We'll start right out with your welcoming and opening comments, please.
Okay. Thanks, Ray, and thanks everyone who's checked in with us this morning. As you know, NASCA brings you several webinars a year, and we base these things on topics that our members tell us are important. Today's topic on district official recruitment and retainment is a topic that our members tell us are critically important. There's a concern in areas about the quality of district officials, not just on the part of NASCA members, but on the part of other district officials as well. It's getting harder and harder to recruit essentially what are volunteers to do what's a vitally important role. And from time to time we hear folks say, well, these district officials are elected officials, so you can't recruit. And the reality is we know better than that. There are a number of ways that we're going to hear some ideas today from some folks in different states on how they effectively recruit these folks. And then I think Ray is going to open things up, and we're hoping that all of you listening today will share some comments and thoughts and experiences you've had in your states as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our presenters, and with that, Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate that. We're going to cover first some logistics, so a few more people are joining us today. Again, you've joined NASCA's webinar on recruiting and retaining outstanding board members. All lines are going to be muted except for presenters, and as Mike pointed out, we're going to call upon some of you that want to present a story about your recruitment experience later on in the webinar. Also want to make note that your questions box on your dashboard at your computer screen is a place where we'll do lots of things today. We'll have you entering in some ideas. We'll have you volunteering to give a short testimonial about recruitment. We're going to get to as many questions. If you have some questions for the presenters, we can get to those questions too. Again, the testimonials will be unmuted individuals that raise a hand, that send me a note via the questions dashboard would be the way that we'll do that today. We've already started the recording. The presentation will be recording, so those friends and other folks that you have, colleagues, that you want to share this with, it'll be up on the NASCA website later on in the next few days. So we want to also welcome, as Mike always points out, feedback is welcome. Kudos, comments, suggestions, recommendations for next titles for our webinars. So the description of our webinar today then really is, as Mike pointed out, it's an informational webinar, a little different webinar than we've had in the past on tips and ideas for recruiting outstanding board members for your conservation district, your state association, and also your state conservation boards, each of which are important. Also, we hope that you pack away a lot of tips and techniques that you can use in other organizations that you belong to that you can utilize there too. We're going to learn from examples from successful board member recruitment from across the nation. We welcome you one and all. We're a strong group. Quite a few of us have joined us today. We're expecting over 60 individuals, and about half the states will be a part of this, represented as part of our workshop today. As I was preparing for this webinar, I was listening to the radio and heard this song lyric. When you get to where you're going, don't forget to turn back around and help the next one in line. Always stay humble and kind. And for many of us that have been in the Conservation District movement for some time, we're reminded that part of our responsibility now is to turn back around, help that next one in line, recruit that next really talented individual into our conservation family at the local and state and national levels, and in so doing, So let's give credit where the credit is. That's Tim McGraw in his song, Humble and Kind. So our agenda is first to set up our purpose and our agenda, the qualities we want in board members. It will be an interactive activity here in just a bit. We're actually going to have you type in your questions area the qualities you want to see in outstanding board members, and we're going to harvest those live. I want to go into the area of what would motivate a board member to want to be a board member and serve in your organization at the conservation district, state association, state board level. The next board member needed will be an activity where we talk about how to recruit to a real need that's in your board. We're going to go into some recruitment methodology and some methods that we've seen across the nation that have worked very well. We're going to receive some testimonials from participants, and we know of 3, and there'll probably be more. If you want to give a testimonial, all you have to do is let me know in the questions dashboard. And then we'll have some open-ended questions and discussion about this topic. So again, let me remind you that the best way to enter questions or dialogue with us and that sort of thing probably is in your questions dashboard there on your screen. So you can try that out, and especially those of you that want to give a testimonial about a successful recruitment that you've done or been a part of or seen, any one of those things would be great. So again, we could have you raise your hand. You could do that, or probably the better way is the questions dashboard. We're going to unmute your line at the time we do some testimonials, have you do some stories. So with that, then, here's what I'd like you to do first. If you'll just take out a piece of paper, any paper there on your desk or around you, and jot down 3 qualities you want to see in your board members. Now, these could be board members of your conservation district, board members on your state association board, or board members on your state conservation board, state association, or conservation district. So take just a little bit of time, jot down 3 qualities you want to see in your board members. I'll give you a couple of minutes here to get that done. At the same time, Mike, I'm going to check the audio with you. How's it coming through today?
Great, Ray.
Okay, thank you. Okay, once you've got those 3 qualities kind of jotted down, go to the questions dashboard. Here's what I'd like you to do. Go to the questions dashboard and just start typing those 3 qualities that you want to see. In your board members. So go ahead and start typing those in your questions dashboard on your computer. And we'll read these out, talk about them a little bit as we go along. Also, we'll harvest these, and between Aaron and I, we'll make sure we get those back out to you. These qualities we want to see. And they're rolling in right now, so let me see how quickly I can read them off. You said you want active board members. You want leadership. You want engagement and dedicated, and an important quality that you want to see is follow through. You want active board members. You want fair board members. You want the willing to advocate for the organization. You want your board members to be informed. You want them to be engaged in conservation. Engaged, this individual said mission-driven, community-focused, a responsive communicator. You want your board member to have time and understand it's a business and care about that business. A commitment, passion, and availability to be fully engaged as a board member. You already know something about conservation. You want to have an interest, be interested, education, and positive. Articulate is another quality one individual mentioned here. Another individual said, we want your board members to take initiative, commitment to conservation, and active in the community. Sensing some good themes here between us today. Active in demonstrating conservation actions. Does pre-work before meetings. Reads their material and comes prepared. One individual said younger. Another said willing to go above and beyond. Another one said passionate, open-minded, connected to the local community, passion for natural resources, plays well with others. Has diverse backgrounds, dedication, outgoing, and hardworking. Innovative, passionate, and organized, involved in farming community and in touch with what's going on in the county. Conservation-oriented, active board members with a good voice, business, and understanding. What a list that we have created. So again, just in that short 2-3 minute burst, we have quite a lot of information that we're going to package and send back to you. We'll actually put that into print for you so that you can have that as a result of our work today. Thank you so much for entering that, and appreciate you entering those into the questions dashboard. We're going to use that questions dashboard a couple times today, so thank you for that. One of the things that is very important in the whole context of trying to recruit to a board member at your local conservation district and also association and state conservation board is that motivation. I want to speak a bit about motivations in several different contexts here, and then apply that to what Mike said earlier. We all recognize on the webinar today that each state has their own way of electing, their own way of appointing, especially board members, conservation district board members. And Mike was alluding to and speaking about how the recruitment process is actually the recruitment before the actual formality of the nomination petitions and other things that we have in our states to have that done. So we're really going to concentrate on how do you get people interested in our boards, you know, to want to run. Some can be motivated, quite frankly, with the history that we have. It's a historical marker for them. Some others can be motivated because districts have, in each of our states, a wide-ranging set of district powers in our state or island law. The personal motivations I'm really going to touch on today, because the personal motivations are really going to be important for you to consider and ferret out as you want to recruit great board members. And I'm going to introduce this question a couple of times today, and this is a very personal question you ask of a potential board member. What do you want to accomplish? Now, interestingly enough, that question can go a lot of different directions depending on the organization we're talking about. What do you want to accomplish? So if it's history, certainly we do have a historical marker here, and we know about and have seen these documented slides very often from Texas and South Dakota and throughout. So I'm going to cruise right on beyond that. But some people are motivated by actually knowing the history and wanting to be a part of it in that history. And you have probably slides like this in your orientation, but we're also going to make these slides available to you if you wanted to give this program back home. So the history, Hugh Hammond Bennett, the congressional hearing where he was able to hold up the committee hearing long enough for the dust to blow past the window at the congressional hearing. Some of these things are really of interest to folks that would want to serve on your conservation district or even take higher positions in your state board or your state association. And certainly we recognize the history here. It's a proud history going all the way back into the Soil Erosion Service, the Department of Interior demonstration sites, competition between agencies, the proud history that includes, you know, the Soil Conservation Service. Kind of interesting recruitment tool that several conservation districts are using across the nation is they're finding our NRCS folks now that want to, they've watched with admiration of the conservation districts, and they wanted to be involved in the conservation district either as a board member or as an employee. So some of the history and the recruitment also is born out of that, the family relationship we have with the agencies and organizations we work with. And of course, our first conservation district in Brown Creek. Hopefully, folks in North Carolina, you can do a little happy dance there regarding our history. Well, it boils down to the need for local guidance and priorities and credibility at the local level when it comes to a conservation district recruit. And the model conservation district law sent out in 1937 was adapted and then adopted and finally changed by so many. But in the recruitment and retention of good board members, you're finding over and over again that the conservation district board member really needs to know what is in that law and part of that history. And by far and away, one of the most important things we can cover with a new potential recruit is the powers of your conservation district in your state. And again, recognizing fully that each one of the conservation district laws is different across our great nation, You're all unique to one of you have a power function within your state law. I'm only going to display one example here.
Ray, this is Mike. Your audio is faded.
All right, thank you. I'm right back to you here. Kind of hate that when you have all of a sudden a headset that goes bad. Mike, are you hearing me now?
Yeah, much better, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, and appreciate that. So we were talking about the powers of conservation districts related to recruitment, retention of great board members. You find that the really great board members have a sound sense of what their powers are, what their role and responsibilities are. More about that in a bit. So I'll display these really quite quickly. You recognize them as the powers and authorities of our conservation districts, and you also recognize that your state is much different than maybe the neighboring state. But you know, I'm going to come back to this because what's interesting is it might be conducting surveys, investigations, and research that really is what of interest personally to a new board member. It could be disseminating information on BMPs. It could be those demonstration projects that are done in our districts or at the state level. Preventative and control measures, cooperating or entering into agreements, the business aspect of being on the board. Real or personal property. There are actually board members that got on boards because they wanted to see the conservation district take an active role in real or personal property types of activities and the business acumen of it. Maintaining and administering, improving acquired properties, mitigations, things like that. Sometimes are those motivations. Selling, leasing, disposing, making available material or equipment. Some folks really want to get on the board because they want to share that latest equipment and technology with their colleagues in fellow producers. Believe it or not, there's some folks that really like to do planning. And so annual plans and long-range plans and publishing those plans. If many of our district board members get on the board because they want to do a project. And again, I'm going to emphasize something that when your recruitment pool for either associate board members or board members themselves, oftentimes the best pool of folks we can do, and you can write this down if you want to, is those that we have served. Those actual clients, customers, cooperators, what you call them in your state, and become our best talent pool because they've done a project with us. It could be that acting as an agent for the federal or state agencies for any conservation project or program. The Regional Conservation Partnership Program is a good example of this, being able to partner up with other folks. They knew somebody or they were somebody that was in federal or state service, but more importantly, the conservation project in their local community. Some are into the money part, the services and the materials that we can accept, and the powers that we have to approve and disapprove plans, and to recommend a fee and implement a fee system, sue and be sued, provide contracting services. Okay, hit a pause button there, check, I'm going to go in and check the questions area to see if they've got any questions coming in that we could answer. And got a few questions here. I'm just gonna start taking them on a little at a time here with a PowerPoint be on the website. Aaron is going to answer me back on this, but I think that we can do that, Aaron. Mike, what do you think? Can we do that?
What'd you ask there, Ray? I missed the first half of that.
Will the PowerPoint be on?
Oh, the participant's asking if we can put the PowerPoint up onto the website so folks can pull it down and use it at their state.
Yeah, absolutely, Ray. When we're done, I'll re-encode this and I'll upload it. We usually upload all of the webinars, the video part, to YouTube, and then we embed that on our site along with any documents or PowerPoints that support that.
Excellent. And just encouragement, keep those questions coming in. So my point with the history and just one example of one state's powers is to demonstrate that oftentimes that knowledge of that history, the historical marker, the powers of a conservation district, or the bylaws of the state association, or again the powers and authorities in state law for a state board, are oftentimes what a potential board member will need in order to really make it an informed decision about whether they want to participate and be a part of that board. Switching gears, so got your peg there on the history and powers and authorities. Let's go to personal motivation. Folks, this next little bit of slides is very, very important in the overall recruitment and retention of outstanding board members. Let's be really frank about it for a bit. We are motivated by our personal motivations. And to learn what those personal motivations are is usually the key to successful recruitment and retention of great board members. But as a part of that, the knowing, and I introduced a question to you way back when, what do you want to accomplish as a board member, drives at these personal motivations. All right, so let's talk about the ones when it seems like we've got political, energy in an individual. They really like the politics. They want to go up on the Hill, whether it's Congress or your state legislature or even the county elected officials. They want to be involved in that political process. Some just have pride in their activities around their community. Their community vested, they really want to be a part of their community, and they just take pride in doing the best that they can. We have motivations that also run in the area of prestige. Some folks really do enjoy and have an opportunity to really feel better about themselves and what they do because they serve on this board or that board. So many of our folks are also motivated by purpose, the conservation purpose, the conservation cause. Many of you mentioned that in your responses to what qualities you want in your board members. Well, one that's kind of interesting to just point out is some get on boards because of the profit or economic pieces of it. They get information there that allow them to be able to be more profitable on their farm or ranch or their place, or even their conservation setting, or even their own business. We have the partnership personal motivation. They just really like working with the state board folks. They really like working with NRCS. They really like working with the Department of Environmental Quality in your state, whatever it might be, but it's the partnering that really is motivation for them. Purpose in conservation has been mentioned already. The business acumen sometimes is a personal motivation. They want to be inspired by working a different business in a different board. This next one, the social one, is kind of interesting. More than once I've been to a board meeting and the board member said, what do you want to accomplish? And they said, well, quite frankly, it's I just enjoy being around these people. And the individual that brings cookies and fudge and whatnot to these meetings is just fantastic. And it's a social experience for them that is a motivator. Community service is a strong motivator for our conservation district movement, and that ability to be able to give back to the community in something that lasts for generations in conservation. And others have personal motivations around accomplishments. They actually want to see the project completed, the program completed, the activity completed. Some have a personal motivation, the heritage, and if you dig down through many of the examples that we find about good recruitment and retention of district board members, state board members, and et cetera, it's around the heritage. My grandfather, my father, and now I, am a part of the conservation movement. No surprise there really, because it becomes a value set in the family that's carried on from generation to generation. Each one of these then are personal motivations, and the question that I brought for you before is, what do you want to accomplish as a board member, allows that individual to speak to that motivation, which is the power that you have in trying to recruit, retain really great board members, is that you can have them tell you what it is from their heart and mind really is what their personal motivation is, just through this one question. So that one question, what you want to accomplish as a board member, becomes the basis then for building an effective board. If you do this exercise, what do you want to accomplish as a board member, and actually take a whiteboard or a computer and write it down, allowing each of your board members, and this is something we do encourage you to do at home, each of your board members to write it down first and articulate it to the others on the board so that the other board members can be part of the team to help them be successful at accomplishing what they want to accomplish. I want to just put a point out here and come back to it, which is we're in a competition for talent. And my sense is the reason why you came onto the webinar today is to fine-tune that competition and find out how you could outcompete others for people's time, energy, effort, and talents. And so this is part of it, is helping that board member. If they're politically motivated, help them get into the arena at the state level or even the national level about what they want to accomplish in conservation while still having that political motivation. If it's economics and profit, have them lead the charge when it comes to coming up with ideas about the economics of conservation. Now, your board members and your board become successful through these individual knowledge of what they want to accomplish as a board member. And those of you that are district managers or employees, state association executives, state board member, field folks, and that sort of thing, you can play this out quite a bit because you'll find that a board will rally around an individual, each of the individuals on the board, and try to help them be successful. Then you've got a really functioning great board based on that recruitment retention of really great board members. And at the same time, the individuals accomplish really what they want to accomplish, which is the payoff. And so many of our jobs that we're talking about today, the board member jobs, aren't compensated in large dollars. It's compensation and really the accomplishments and things that they want to accomplish. Okay, speak a bit about recruitment. Once known, the recruitment really is matching that personal motivation with the opportunities to accomplish something in your conservation district, state association, or state board. So you're matching those up. So let's just break away a little bit. I'm going to take a couple of questions here, answer those, and then we're going to go right back to a testimonial or two. All right. So how do you get current board members? Go back to the question here. How do you get current board members to value the potential board members with differing views from theirs? It's quite an interesting dynamic that goes on, isn't it? And what a great question when you look at, you've got a board probably that's pretty staunch in their values, staunch in their ways. They're pretty much looking at just the way that things have been done, and they kind of like them. So I'm going to go back to that question. One of the things that I think is important is that they each would know what it is that they want, from that experience as a board member. And then encouragement from those of us that work in the field with districts regularly, to take that differing view and look at it, actually reframe or relook at, some of the things you're going to do. One question I like to ask a board is if they're dealing with an issue, or differing views, ask them to go to a future desired state and have the board talk about that, what it looks like when it's working well. And that oftentimes will allow the group to find a place that they can all go to. Maybe not the methodology of how they're going to get there, but if they've got a North Star, you might say, to look at, or a place, a desired future state they want to go to. And this works well, especially for differing views, issues of concern, that sort of thing. Put the board into a working opportunity for what does it look like when it's working well. Will we discuss the ability of district staff to recruit board members? Absolutely, and we'll make sure that we do that and have an impression that we are restricted on that. That again, if you want assistance with that, oftentimes you can go to your state conservation agency staff, and they can help you with, are there restrictions in your state? There may be some. And the fact of the matter is, though, that district staff that are working with clients, customers, cooperators really become an excellent place for ideas, even if the fellow board members go out and actually make the conversation. Oftentimes it's people that we've identified that might be good. So Joe, Susan, Jane, Jack would be good supervisor, and then figuring out within your own board who might go approach them. They might be a family, relation or another relation of some kind within the community that you can use. So the staff role is important. Let's not diminish this at all. Even if it would be working from the background just to bring your board members, potential ideas for associate supervisors, or associate board members, or board members themselves for filling vacant positions. I think this is a good, healthy discussion that you have between district staff and a board. It's kind of hard to do it in an open public meeting oftentimes, but there are times when the board members are visiting your office and whatnot, you can have those levels of discussion. So it's a bit tricky. I know you kind of want to, make sure that you check in with your board about, and give it a try though. Just let the people know informally that you got some outstanding people. Thanks for that question too. How do we weed out the ones that are in it only for personal reasons, that aren't very sound to the actual value set or the mission of the organization? And what a great question. The experience that we have seen is districts that have made sure that individuals that thought they were interested in the district board know what the values of that district board are, what we stand for, what we're trying to do, and how we're trying to go about it. And it's not a perfect science at all, but knowing those sorts of things oftentimes will help the individual decide, yeah, we really do want to stay with this board, or no, this board is not going to be for us. I think of one example in Washington State that one of our field folks was working with, and it took almost a year and a half of them trying to do end runs around their board, trying to do things that really the rest of their board could not want to have done, or their staff. It was a turbulent time. It was not an easy time. But finally they decided that this wasn't the organization for them, or the organization they thought it was, where they could do what they wanted to do. The personal reasons that they got on just really weren't in concert with what the board wanted to do. It's excruciating. Usually takes more than just a meeting or two. Sometimes it will take the whole term of office before they decide to do it. So it's sad, but true. So our next question comes in: does grooming of board members lead to lack of diversity? I suppose, from at least my perspective anyway, that could, but we've had those experiences where we've introduced diversity, in not only thought but also in gender and race and just interest, diversity of interest, and it tends not to, grooming board members doesn't necessarily have to mean that you are going to lead to a lack of diversity, I guess is the way I'd answer that question. In fact, diversity may be the stimulant for the board to really become great, those alternative ideas. Again, I want to go back to that, your best board question that you can use for bringing a board together that's divergent, and really not coming to the same place, is have them look at that issue or that program in relation to what it looks like when it's really working well. Okay, so a few testimonials here. We've got people lined up, and I'm very excited about these testimonials that they're going to be offered. And so I'm going to check in with Laura Fribley, Laura from Indiana, and she's going to introduce herself, tell a quick story about recruitment from her perspective, and give us just kind of an opportunity to hear Laura's story. So Laura, let's test the audio and see if we make it work today. Laura, are you on?
Well, Ray, can you hear me, as they say?
We can. We can hear you loud and clear, Laura. So we're looking forward to your recruitment and retention story.
Wonderful. Well, this will focus more on recruitment of board members or supervisors as well as associates, and we have a few examples from around the state. One county has created a brochure to hand out to potential candidates, and they just created that last year. I've already used it once, so they were glad that they had it on hand, and it just talks about what it is to be a supervisor and what they would expect out of a supervisor or an associate. We have another county that wanted to get more folks engaged, and they brainstormed a list of names that they thought would be good to recruit, and then they contacted these individuals, engaged their interest, and they had a meeting at a park that had a lake, as well as an educational outreach program that the district had done in the past, which included some signs along a boardwalk. And I guess they had ice cream and some light refreshments, and let the individuals hear more about the board and what it would be to be a supervisor or an associate. So they had about 10 people come to this event, and they had handouts. Each of the staff members and each of the supervisors had a small piece on the agenda, and they went through and talked about what the district was, what they'd been involved with, etc. And out of that 10 people that came to the meeting, they ended up with 3 really active associates. So that might be one of our shining stars. And then one other I'll share is one of the counties decided that what would work best for them is if they had all of their townships in their county represented. And that way, as they got watershed grants or as they worked on their EQIP ranking, locally led meetings, they would have representation. So they took it on that angle. I think you could look at other stakeholder groups that you were interested in within your SWCD, or I'm sorry, your conservation district. But what they did is they targeted people, and let me pull up my notes here. Because of this, they really targeted people within each township and approached the folks, and this was a combination of the staff and the supervisors working together to invite them to meetings, provide pretty regular follow-up phone calls, like, are you coming to our meeting tomorrow or next week, etc. And now they have 10 active associate supervisors, and all but one of their township is covered. These associates attend board meetings, they participate with their own individual skills, and they really feel valued. So one gentleman is in his 80s. He likes to make birdhouses, which works out well for one of their educational events. They have some members who work on the farm during the day, and so these individuals are good for helping set up for special events or meetings, etc. So they really make each individual feel like they're valued, and they're not just there to attend a meeting per se. So that's kind of the, I guess, condensed version of those activities, and I can share any more information if anyone is interested.
That's outstanding. Well, Jennifer, one of the first folks responded back to you. Are you willing to share that brochure with us? Would you get us to NASCA, and we can put it on our website with the PowerPoint slides, maybe?
Sure, and I'll check with the district to make sure that's okay. She said I could, yes, I'm sure that'd be fine.
Okay, great. Jennifer, thanks so much. And we may have some more questions. We'll unmute you if there are more questions that come in related to your experience. Now, one of the things that I noticed about what you were saying is the power of the associate. Before Laura, before we leave you, then why don't you talk a bit about the power of associate on district boards, for example?
Well, I think each district approaches them differently, and some of them like to get associates involved to share their skills that they have. An associate may be happy being an associate at that level. Other boards are more interested in getting associates involved so that when they have vacancies within the board, that these individuals are already kind of pre-trained per se and can step up. And another topic that has just come up in the last few weeks within conversations is having something that we would call conservation advocates. So you may have your supervisors, board members, your associates, and then, as these associates move on or these board members move on, if they're interested in staying involved, having them remain as a conservation advocate, because then you've sort of multiplied your effect within your county or within your region. These people are still out there doing good things regardless if they're involved with the conservation district. So how can we capitalize on these individuals, talking to legislators, talking to local officials. So that's a new concept we've been throwing around.
Yeah, it really expands the And if you look at each of the associates as representing a group of organizations they belong to or a part of, or a segment of the community that we maybe don't have represented on the board itself, what a dynamic, huh? What a dynamic. And of course, associates without voting rights, official voting rights as an elected or appointed official, still can become very active in meetings, very active in events, very active in giving their knowledge, experience, and so forth. So folks wanted me to make sure that we did touch on associates. Laura, you did a fabulous job on that. Thank you so much. So those of you that want to give a short testimony like Laura's, you know, just throw a question out there, throw it on your questions dashboard, and we'll call you up too. I'm going to go all the way out to Maryland and ask Elmer to share his experience in recruitment and retention of great board members. Elmer?
Good morning, everyone. I'm from Maryland and work in Washington County. We're primarily a dairy county. I think I should just tell you a little bit about Maryland. Our supervisors are appointed by our State Soil Conservation Committee. They come from recommendations from the Extension Service, our local Farm Bureau, 2 at-large appointments which are advertised by the Extension Service, and then our Board of County Commissioners make an appointment. The supervisors are on for 5 years, and they can be reappointed indefinitely. So then the oversight of their attendance and their ethics and all those kind of things is handled by the State Soil Conservation Committee. So, and State Committee provides some annual training. We had Ray at one of our state meetings, I think year before last, to talk about this very topic. So as far as how we recruit and get great board members and how we approach diversity, we were one of the first boards in the state to have a female board member. I know in this day and age that shouldn't be surprising, but it is on many conservation district boards in Maryland. And Betty came to us in 1994 and was very active and proved herself as such an asset, and she has since gone off the board. And I say that to say that during that time, NRCS was urging conservation districts to become more diverse, and we were influenced by Don Spickler, who was the Northeast representative to NACD. He was hearing those things, seeing the diversity increasing across the country. So it just sort of in those years became ingrained in what we wanted to do. So our focus has been in making sure our supervisors represent primarily agriculture, because that's where most of our effort is placed, but also the urban community, sediment erosion control, those type of things, as well as education. So our boards always had representatives from the different types of agriculture. Currently we have folks that are involved in organic grass-based dairy that are on our board, a traditional dairy operation, an orchardist, a gentleman who is a construction manager for a major construction firm and is a numbers guy and actually is our treasurer. And the way we get and keep those people is through our associates program. We always have 3 to 5 associate supervisors on board. We recruit them just very simply by saying, hey, you know, we just moved somebody up. It's time to start thinking about another associate. So we kind of fish around in the community and we talk about, what should they represent in the community on our board? Is it time to have somebody from the urban community? Do we need to have another agricultural type representative? And the way we handle that is just discussing with an individual that we think has potential. And then we have a written policy for our associates, and so we go over that with a potential associate. And our state committee has an excellent handbook, the supervisor's handbook, that details all of the responsibilities and powers of the conservation districts in Maryland. So we give that to them. We invite them to come to meetings, and we've had cases where people have come to a few meetings and kind of, as Ray was talking about, it wasn't painful though, Ray. they said, you know, this isn't for me, and that's a good thing, because with an associate, it's an appointment made by the board, doesn't need any other approval, and then annually we evaluate our associates and talk to them and ask them, you know, do you want to be reappointed for another year? Are you still interested? We noticed you haven't been coming to meetings. We'd like to, and if that's the case, that has happened. Say, it looks like you're really not interested. We'd like to maybe have someone else come on as an associate. So it's a way for us to gauge the interest of. We encourage them to attend state and national meetings, and we actually provide a way to help them financially with that, so that it's easier for them to say yes to that, so they can get some different perspectives statewide and nationally. And we look at it specifically in our policy as a training position to become a district supervisor. And I can say that all of our current board members began as associate supervisors. So, when they came on board, they knew what they were getting into. They knew the staff. They knew what, you know, who the people working in the office were. And we always have between 15 and 19 people in the partnership in the office. And so there's a, you know, and we have some part-time folks, but so there's quite a group of people to get to know, become familiar with. And, you know, our associates, Ray, you said about the power of associates. I made some notes. Our associate supervisors currently, we have 3. One of them is an older gentleman, Carl, who's a dairyman. He brings wisdom and knowledge and a community connection to that community, to our board, and it's very welcome. One of our other board members is actually just became the superintendent of Washington County Schools, a gentleman who started out teaching ag in the classroom and has worked his way up through the system. I can't tell you how valuable it is to have somebody of his caliber advising me when it comes time to go to the county commissioners for our relatively small budget. He goes to the county for about $60 million a year. He's a big help to me, advising me on who to talk to and how to present things. And another gentleman that's on there, he's a grain producer and raises heifers, and he's connected with the grain producers board locally and also nationally. So he brings some information and input from his association with the state, and it's been extremely valuable. So that's kind of how we do it. It's the board is you know, appointed by the state committee with a lot of input from the local conservation district, and we look at it as having a diversity of representation from all the types of agriculture, but also the other biggest customer we have are our urban folks. And we've, ever since I've been here, we've had somebody involved in that, so they can represent those interests. And that's kind of what we do, Ray.
Elmer, that's fantastic, and it feels like you've almost got a trial area there of associates that bring their talents, experience, and knowledge, and then when an opening, my sense is you never have a problem filling an opening, even with the different type of structure you have in Maryland, where it comes from recommendations from Farm Bureau or other organizations in your statute. So you've got a built-in set of interests, right? And
yes.
Do you ever have problems using the Maryland system for getting your people, you know, onto your board?
We have not. You know, the Maryland system, I think, is quite good. They like to have 3 applications for every opening. So you know, the way we handle that is we ask our other associates if they would be willing to put in an application, and you know, we're honest with them that we're going to, if it's a board member that the board has said they'll support. Our state committee always looks for a letter of support and guidance from the board to say, yeah, one of these applicants, we would really like to have them reappointed. They're doing a great job. Or this person's been an associate for 5 or 10 years in some cases, and we'd like to have them have this new open position. And that weighs heavily with state committee, and we coordinate that with our Western area rep. And so we don't have a lot of trouble with that. And actually filling out the application for the supervisor position is a great exercise for an associate because it's not just, hey, I want to serve. It's what do you know? What is your background? It's about a 3-page application. Maybe it's down to 2 now. So it makes them look at why are they on the board and what are they doing and what do they bring. And it's been all healthy.
Well, this is a good example. We sometimes hear a comment from district employees or supervisors, state folks. They say, well, you know, the nomination process in our state doesn't allow us to recruit. And to that I say bunk. I think there's still active recruitment that can go on and retention of great board members. One of our participants just said that to help their associate supervisors feel like they're a voice at the meetings, since they don't have voting rights, a recognition of that, we take recommendations from our associates and then take the motion from one of our 5 supervisors and take action on the recommendation that comes out of the discussion. So the chair is on his or her, you know, best chair behavior and calls upon the people that are in the room for input. So at their district. So kind of a neat technique we'll share with y'all. And Elmer, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. I know the participants really appreciate your taking the time to join us and then to add your ideas. Elmer, any last thoughts before we mute you and call on Jennifer?
No, just to thank you for you guys listening to what I had to say.
Thank you, Elmer. Very, very much appreciated. Well, with us today is Jennifer, also from Indiana. Jennifer, are you with us? Jennifer, are you with us?
Yes, sorry. Hi, thank you, Ray.
And,
can you hear me okay?
You bet, even from a state association perspective today. Thank you.
Right, so I'm Jennifer Boyle-Warner with the Indiana Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and Laura Fribley spoke earlier about some great examples of our individual districts and how they recruit. And so I'm just going to talk here quickly about our state association board. And we have 4 officers, past president, and 8 region directors. And our 8 region directors on the board are elected every year at our annual conference. And one of the things we've been concentrating on, it's ebbed and flowed through the years, but we really are trying to promote it much more so over the last couple of years, are assistant region directors. And so those assistant region directors can be a huge help to the region director. There's only 1 vote at a board meeting between the 2, so if both the region director and the assistant region director are there, it's only 1 vote, and it's the region director that votes. But obviously the input of the assistant region directors is invaluable at our board meetings because it just brings more voices for the entire state. It also helps out if the region director cannot make a meeting. We only have 6 meetings a year, and so if they can't make a meeting, we don't have that region represented at a meeting. So that's why the assistant then is extremely important. And it just gives 2 voices back out to each of the regions with additional help of getting feedback from those regions, bringing that feedback to the board. So our board has really ramped up this getting assistant region directors, and this year we actually have 8 assistant region directors on our board. So it is making our board meeting a little bit larger and needing to handle that a little differently, but it's fantastic. It's diversified our board immensely, not only with gender, with age, with background. So it's really kind of exciting to have all these new faces and new voices to the board. But I think, Ray, going back to some of the things that you've touched on before, or people have asked, is how can staff be more involved? And I think as a staff person, I see one of my big roles, and I think this would be the same for a local district, is you really need to get to know your board members. You need to understand what their motivation is for being on a board, especially at a state board, because not only are they serving on their local board, but now they're also serving on a state board, and so they're even busier than ever. And so understanding what that motivation is and learning where their strengths are so that you can utilize people and value them in the different activities that you have going on at the state association. And it takes a lot of time to do that, but it's probably one of the most valuable things I think as a staff person you can do, is to really get to know your board members individually and learn how to utilize them to the best of their abilities.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer, thank you for joining us, giving us a state association board perspective, which is another arena of board, retention and board recruitment. And I want to build on that a little bit. Any last thoughts before I mute your line and move on with some presentation?
No, go ahead.
Thanks, Jennifer. So folks, going to move on and keep your questions coming in, and if there are a testimony that you want to give about your experience in recruitment and retention of outstanding board members, please just send me an item on the questions dashboard. Well, there are some elements of really effective recruitment that I want to go over today with you. One is recruiting to the cause, and don't we have a wonderful cause in conservation that we can recruit to? Have interested people, and the interest we've seen just explodes with conservation, the environment, and that sort of thing. We're seeing it every day. And the need. We're going to talk a bit about the effective recruitment being based on the need. A couple of our speakers mentioned that, but let's drive a few points home about the need in our conservation district, state board, state association. The competition for time, Jennifer just mentioned that. I want to build on that. The actual recruitment process, the reward once you get a board member in and you're rewarding them in that personal motivation area of what they want to do. And then finally, community and the involvement in the community related to recruitment and retention. And then again, we've had 3 examples, and those of you that want to share your testimony also as an example, we would entertain that. So let's first talk about need. And one of the most important things you can do is analyze the needs of your current board. And so the opportunity to be able to look at your board face up and say, what we really need is this experience, knowledge, skills in a board member. And this could happen at the district board level. This can happen at the state association level. It can happen at the state board level. But actually inventorying your board programs and activities, and then looking at your current board makeup in regards to how are you positioned to be able to do the best job on those programs and activities. So that usually means that you're going to identify your strengths that you've got within your current board members, actually look yourselves right in the eye and say, we've got a few weaknesses and we've got some goals we need to attain, and if we have this type of individual, that type of individual, created the diversity in our board to be able to meet this need or that need would be most important. So this is going to take a little bit of time where you identify the current talents of your board members and match those against strengths, weaknesses of your board and their programs and activities. Then this becomes the gap analysis where you're looking at it and saying, okay, what we really do need is a recruitment of these needed talents. And you don't necessarily have to go to a person's name or that sort of thing as much as you need these talents, and then look at the pool of individuals within your county, within your state, to be able to serve in that arena. One of the most common complaints we hear in the small rural communities, where there's maybe only 2,500 to 3,000 people in the entire county, is we just don't have enough people to do this. And while that's a rational excuse or a problem, you're talking about, a few board member positions that you need to fill. And if the district's still active, for example, if it's the district level, if the district's still active, you're still serving clients. So the clients that you serve become, again, probably that best place, especially in the small rural communities. You invite other organizations to recommend the candidate. Maryland has a very specific process where they do that in their state, but other of us in other states really don't have that specific, Farm Bureau, this and that, the other organization that would do that. But you can invite organizations, especially those organizations that have interest in a talent area that you do not have on your board, to just identify folks within their membership that you think would have the talents, experience, and knowledge that they think would match what it is you have. And surprisingly enough, as field folks for NASCA, for our state conservation agency, sometimes we're pressed into action to do that, to actually help a board think through the organizations that they could go to. So the need also we're recognizing the fact that each state has your unique election and appointment rules. We're not discounting that at all, but we're asking you not to use that as an excuse that you can't recruit into those formal processes. The need to recruit is omnipresent, and then the need to help new people follow the election and appointment procedures. One of the things that can be more frustrating than anything is you got that associate or that new recruit, they're ready to step up and be a board member, and then all of a sudden they get up against, the appointment process or election process becomes daunting. So for many of us that work with districts on a regular basis or are in districts, helping that new candidate, with the paperwork, at least, knowledgeable about what the process means. They'll fill out their own paperwork, but being able to do that is important. All right, so the next person up, the next board member that's needed on your board. So we're going to identify those gaps, the resource, education, maybe it's business issues needing addressed on your board, association, or state board. And once you've got that next board member needed, the recruitment becomes a process of being able to identify that expertise that you can really get, that you want on your board, and then finding the expertise that's needed in the next board member that you want to recruit. So this becomes a matching game. Here are the needs we have. Here's what we need to be able to recruit to. Here's the experience, knowledge, and skills we need. So some boards are using a small group activity to identify that resource, education, and business need that you need addressed in your organization. So, to ask the whole board to do this, probably some of your board members aren't interested in recruitment and retention of their fellow board members, and that's probably the wrong audience to do this. But if you've got a board member or two that likes to do this and staff resources to help them, this would be a small group activity that you could do. And as a board activity, you could identify the expertise of the current board members that bring the board. We mentioned that just a couple of slides ago, and that's an important activity. If you can get your whole board to do it, great. I mean, that's the best. If you can't, then at least have a small group activity where 2 or 3 of you really sit down and do that. And then finally, another small group activity we can offer to you in this webinar is to identify the expertise that's needed in the next member. So these are 3 small group activities that can be done by the same small group, or it can be done by your whole board, as an activity that you want to do. These aren't really time-consuming. I think you saw how quickly we were able to generate the qualities we wanted in a board member. So these 3 small group activities are things that we can get at. Let's move to competition. Oh my goodness, folks. With the fast pace of things that are going on now and the competition for people's time, whether it be the high school ball game or college ball game, or it could be this event, that event, just even taking time to do Facebook and all these things that we do nowadays. So the bottom line to this is you're competing. It's an open competition for effective leaders, and they're in high demand because those folks that are really talented and experienced knowledge about conservation things and things that you want on your board, they're in high demand probably by other organizations, agricultural, environmental, and fish and wildlife organizations. They're all wanting these people. So you're in a competition, and in order to be really good in that competition, you're competing, recognizing for people's time, family, friends, recreation, hobbies, work interests, other volunteer activity. So back to that question, what would they want to accomplish as a district board member or as a state association or state board member, means that you've got to outcompete for those things that are listed there in that bullet. And this is not easy, but it is effective, and we've heard a couple testimonies about effective ways to do that. So you're also competing with other organizations for talented people. And I might just mention, and I'll touch on this a couple of times, state associations and state boards have a difficult time sometimes because the individual really, their interest in what they want to accomplish is at the local level. They want programs, projects, activities at the local level, and so, competing for their time, interest, and et cetera to the state association is kind of a tough thing to do. But in that competition, I'm always encouraged because if you match the interests of that individual with opportunities to serve as a board member, you're looking for your association, for example, for folks that really want to work at that state level. they may have political interest, in mind, or legislative relations things in mind, or partnering in mind that really interest them, and they like that, state level activities. So finding out fairly quickly, of our talent pool who might want to serve, and then the next person up, so that you don't have to starve for board members, in our state associations or state conservation board. I'm reminded by my college roommate that he participates in the Conservation District Board. He is a state association and a state board member, a state conservation agency board member, and he told me the reason why he does it is because it's part of his industry. He feels it's part of him doing a good job for his industry and being and serving on these various organizations, and what a motivator, for that. So he's also, involved in other organizations he feels like are part of representing his interest in industry and in the farming industry. So local to state to national positions is a real sorting mechanism, but if you know what it is they want to accomplish, you'll know whether or not they want to accede to state and national positions. The NACD also, we got some of the NACD staff online today. They could probably talk story about how, they have a few folks that want to be involved at the national level and how they were able to get there. Let's speak of community. The community involvement in the recruitment and retention is very, very important. Who knows who has those talents, abilities, and knowledge, and that sort of thing. People that are representative of the community and talent that we want on our boards. But also, let's take a speak, and this is a very, very important part of the presentation today. Is your board representing the community in the gender, age, ethnics, in terms of the interest in education and the conservation issues and that sort of thing? Are we really representative, and can we encourage more diversity? In my experience in working with the boards who had introduced a new member that really wasn't near like the other board members in many respects, it was the best thing. After a couple of rough meetings maybe, or a couple of tough meetings, they found themselves really aligning their value set and doing fine. But the diversity of thought and the diversity of all of that is very important. So create opportunities for diversity in your membership. Expect that the first days or the first couple meetings or so that new individual that's a diverse individual on a board will need to find their place on that board. And what we hope to do is create a welcoming culture, not a culture that says, well, you're different and we're not going to listen to you, but inviting that alternative or that other voice in the room to talk about things in a different way than we've thought about it before as an organization. It's really a growth mechanism, though, and it's sometimes not easy to do that. Still need to match the interests with the opportunity. Serving as a board member would be important to other interests they have. And one of the examples I can give for recruitment on a local board here in Washington State is the League of Women Voters did a study on conservation districts in our state. And what we found was the interest by League members in positions of conservation districts. And for that short period of time where the study was completed and the League of Women Voters members started to participate in our districts, we really saw a very nice change in some of our district boards to the extent that they got involved, they were involved, they cared about where we were spending money for projects and programs, the conservation and environmental impacts of those things. But wow, we tapped a talent pool just in one organization that was phenomenal, and very proud of it. So here's the reward. There are 3 things all board members need. You can write these down. We're going to have these PowerPoints up for you so you can use these with your boards and whatnot. But 3 things every board member needs. One is that they need to know what role and responsibilities they have as a board member. Very, very important. Early on orientation, early on discussions by those of us that staff boards, to make sure that every member knows what their role and responsibilities are on the board. Sometimes we find this in our bylaws. Sometimes we find this in state law, depending on the organization that we're talking about, whether it's a district, state association, or state board. You go to those bylaws and or the conservation district law, state board law, that says here's your role and responsibilities, your powers and authorities. The second biggest thing that we can do, and this is really an important staff role, is to keep your board members informed. Now, board members have a responsibility to read the things and understand the things and ask, questions and to stay informed themselves. So they have a responsibility in this, but we as staff also have a responsibility to bring them information in a way that they can process it and use it to be an effective board member. And then finally, the third thing, and this is the key really to retention of good board members. So you got them recruited, you got them on the board, they know what they're doing, and they're looking for information, about what they can do as a board member and what their programs are and that sort of thing. But do they have a meaningful contribution? Now, I usually ask the question right about this point in the workshop setting, okay, who decides whether or not they're having a meaningful contribution? And the answer, of course, that I hear over and over again is, oh my, well, it's the individual themselves, and they make that decision based on what they want to accomplish and what's really driving them to be on your board. So meaningful contribution is the key to real successful retention after the recruitment is done. So these three things, whether you're a board member on Friends of the Whoopee Cushion or Conservation District, State Board, State Associations, these three things are needed. So if you really want to look at your recruitment and retention process, look at how well you are providing this information and board members are receiving this information. Three things everybody needs. So the recruitment methods that some have been talked about already, but I want to do a shout out to NACD, and I believe that they've got a nice publication out that if they'll share it with NASCA, maybe one of our regional representatives from NACD will send that over to NASCA and we can put it up on the website with the rest of this material. But I know NACD over the years, and in fact when I was working for them too, we did quite a bit of work in this arena and put out at least a handbook, if I remember correctly, and some other things. But in that, and I'm going to show you an example of a district's prospectus. Position, meeting with other organizations is an important recruitment method, especially if you're starving for somebody with certain talents and knowledge, and just think of the organization that might attract that type of board member, and then go talk with them. I can't emphasize enough the landowners that are active in the district programs that are receiving our services. The other day I went out on an implementation monitoring with one farmer. We struck up a conversation after looking at his new grass waterway. I said, have you ever thought about being a Conservation District board member, because they had a vacancy right then? And he said, yes, I have. He said, in fact, my changes in where I'm at now with the family and some other things and business, I could actually do that and wanted to do that for some time and was a board member before. And so he went into the district office, filled out the official paperwork, got involved, and immediately was appointed by the board to fill a vacancy. So sometimes this is as simple as asking the question of the right individual. You can have some group discussions, certainly, and the district prospectus. Well, a potential board member needs to know what the district does or what the state association does or what the state board does. So whether it's any one of those three, I'm going to use the district as my example here, my rubric, is that they need to know the district function. They need to know the mission and vision of the organization. They need to know the goals and objectives of the organization. They need to know the legal authority, whether it's imposed in the district law or whether it's in the bylaws. They need to know the major issues you're dealing with right now as a board. What is it that your board's dealing with that they really need to have help from a new prospective board member or associate? The major programs and activities that are going on right now in the Conservation District or the State Association or the State Board, funding sources, the expectations of board members to any one of those three areas, but in particular the expectations of district board members, the benefits of being a district board member. And then finally, we've found this district prospectus has come up from time to time, and I'll just put it up on the screen, see if it'll come up for you. I'm going to send this to Aaron also so it can be on the website. And this follows the same train of thought that I just presented to you. So the concerned citizens of XYZ County looking for somebody on the Conservation District Board. We're now speaking to the board specific mission and vision, goals and objectives would be listed there. The legal authority for your state would be listed. also some information about, the major programs and activities. And of course, this is just an example. The funding sources, the expectations of a board member. And one of the questions earlier was, how do you set that tone for the values and what the board member should do? The benefits of being a board member, and then additional information. Very important part of this is additional information, a contact name, an email address, the ability to be able to get to somebody that would be knowledgeable about questions that would come up for the new recruit. So again, this nice form, and I believe this is in the NACD handbook too, is the recruitment prospectus. We'll send you this template so that you can actually just fill this out, so that you wouldn't have to start from ground zero. All right. So there's the recruitment prospectus and the job description, general function, duties, responsibilities, term of service, qualifications, commitment required. I'm going through this very quickly because I know you have done these for not only your staff positions but other positions too. Your training requirements, the function of the conservation district or the state board or the state association. And we are going to provide this example from Virginia, and just found that in the materials that were out there. And this is just a nice template that you could follow that makes specific to your particular organization, whether it be a district director, or whether it be a board member for your state association, or whether it be a state board member. Any one of these would require a good job description so that people would know what the primary responsibilities were and duties, and the terms of service, the qualifications that you're looking for, the commitment required, because oftentimes, remember, you're competing against people's time, so they need to know what kind of commitment is required for the board member participation, training requirements, and then the function of the organization. Went through that fairly quickly, but again, the intent here is to put that up on the website and have that for you. So recruitment strategies and materials, and then we're going to get to some questions, and if some of you wanted to do a testimonial, again, I can unmute a line or two here and we can have some more testimonials. Assemble a board development team could be one of the things you could do. Develop a referral network, who knows who, about the types of talents we need on our board. The board members' information format or form of some kind. Letter to organizations is kind of an interesting recruitment strategy where you're recruiting to a particular need, a diversity that you need on your board and talents you need on your board, and you know the organizations that are active in that particular arena. So if it's habitat development, if it's endangered species, if it's a business type of thing, we've had districts across the nation that have actually recruited bankers because they wanted to have somebody with a business and financial background, onto their board, or at least an associate position. Public service announcements are used. News releases can be put together. Official process for elections and appointments needs to be taken into account here, because we do recognize that there are official and appropriate ways to recruit into the formal processes. More strategies. Social media may be a way to get at this. Not that familiar with social media, but those of you that are would know that this might be powerful to a certain audience that you want to recruit to. Newspaper advertisements, a little less used nowadays than in the past. Board member recruitment brochure was brought up by Laura, and we'll share that, one example, and the recommendations from staff and others. Very, very powerful. The strategies around who knows who that has this talent that we're searching out for our board. Recruitment in annual and special meetings. Well, if folks are willing to come to an event that you're holding, like the event that Elmer mentioned a little bit earlier, and wasn't that something we heard from I think it was Laura that mentioned that they had an event, they had handouts from one of their districts, 10 people came, 3 of them expressed interest. Wow, that's a pretty good fishing expedition to have 3 of 10, actually present interest. Distributing recruitment prospectus in your job description. When you do have the interest, and certainly you probably wouldn't want to lead with this, but you certainly want to, if somebody's interested, make sure that they've got this material. Personal contacts may be one of the most powerful pieces that we have. And for the individual that asks, is staff involved in this? They must be involved with it. Some of our NRCS friends say, should we be involved with it? To the extent that they at least bring to the supervisor's attention candidates that might be good for the district board. and let the board and the manager perhaps deal with how best to contact those individuals. The recipients of our services can't say it enough. So I'm gonna go into a board member's toolkit here in a bit, but I'm gonna go check the questions here and pull up some questions, and let's talk about some of the questions that you wanted to talk about and make sure that we've handled those. And one of the questions that came in is, well, one comment came in is make CDs a priority in their life is one of those qualities that we really want to make sure that we keep, you know, in terms of qualities of outstanding board members we want. Is there a time frame, this individual asked, within the total time served that supervisors tend to be most productive? Many board members retain their positions for long periods, and I've noticed that some of our long-term board members tend to be more hands-off than the newer supervisors. And maybe there are some ways to revitalize their conservation interest. Again, thanks for this question. So here's a personal testimony of mine. I was noticing that one of our board members in one of our districts, we'll call him Keith for now, Keith was really starting to lose interest and actually declared at a board meeting that he was going to get off the board. It really worried me because Keith was quite a good leader, one of those individuals that you would want on any one of your boards, and you know, very active in organizations and this church and the conservation arena and the big farmer, right? So everything you'd want. So I called Keith and I said, well, what's going on, Keith? He said, they're not doing what I want to do. And I said, well, Keith, what is it you want to do? He said, I just want to see trees planted in our county. And I thought, well, this is a rural, kind of desolate kind of county, but he wanted to see trees planted in the county. I mean, remember, this was a large irrigation farmer, but Keith wanted to see trees planted. I said, Keith, we've been sending you all the stuff on irrigation, water management, and that sort of thing, and my goodness, isn't that what you want to do? He said, no, that's not why I got on the board. I got on the board because I wanted to see trees planted in my county. That taught me that one of the most valuable lessons about long-term or even short-term board members. If they tend to be hands-off, there's probably a reason. There could be a personal reason, there could be a business reason, there could be a reason like Keith. You know, we just weren't dealing with this. The next board meeting, I brought it up as a field guy for their board. I brought it up to the board, and they said, great, you know, Keith, you've been wanting to do that for a while? I said, yes. But never did we give him the opportunity to speak at a board meeting about what he wanted to accomplish. So they immediately swung into action, found trees from the Forest Service and the Department of Natural Resources and whatnot, and started building their planting program in their county. It became very active and very successful. So one very good testimony here about how you can revitalize, even with that question with our long-term board members, ask them what they want to accomplish. They might be shy. Here's the way you do it, though. You actually ask them to write it down and then speak to it. If you just ask them to speak to it, they'll go shy on you and maybe not say anything. But you ask them to write it down and then repeat it. That becomes very good. Hope that's a good tip for you. Here's another comment. Is if all we had to do was find farmers on the board, it'd be pretty easy because of our diversity. We need to find legal people and business people and urban folks and legal and business and educators of all different types. And are there places to go to find these people? Conservation-minded people are still a pretty small pool, and so it depends on your communities. But certainly, you know, for education, you would approach, you know, people that are involved in the school district and the schools themselves, people that are teachers. You can find folks. Even in the media, it's kind of interesting because if you find that right person that really cares about the environment and conservation, you know, you can have them attending your regular meetings too. But certainly your legal, business, and other folks, my tip is sometimes you can go right to the association of, you know, attorneys or attorneys in the town or whatever towns that you serve, the business that you serve. Like the example I gave you, the businesses that come to mind here are banks, and probably it's kind of interesting because you can walk a fine line here because you can attract businesses that are really into conservation work. But as an associate, you know, that's all right because they don't have a legal vote at that point. They could come and at least give their expertise and listen in to the work you're doing. The urban sector, probably attend a few city council meetings or a few council meetings and whatnot and see who shows up, see who's there. strike up some conversations. Let them know that you're part of the conservation district of your local area. I've got another opportunity here, and I'm going to call on him in just a bit, another opportunity for an example or two. So Stu, hang in there, and I'll call on you in just a bit. How do you combat stagnancy on a board? For example, this is the way my dad did it, and his dad did it, and was it good enough for them, so I'm not changing it? It's a question that we've dealt with a time or two. What I would suggest on combating stagnancy on the board is this focus question. So you can write this down if you want. Make sure you got a pen and pencil handy. One way to kind of shake up a board is to use this question. What is the next best idea for improving our board and our organization? Again, let me repeat it. What is the next best idea we need to consider for improving our board or our organization or the programs we deliver? And then the way you do this, though, again, is very, very important. As a facilitator, you're going to ask them to write it down at their place, and then you're going to ask them to just repeat what they wrote down. A very important part of this is that we, as adult learners, we learn by writing, doing, seeing, speaking, all these different things, and we all do it differently. So you want to appeal to the writing, you want to appeal to the speaking and listening, you want to do all that through that exercise. Again, the question that you ask your board is, what is the next best idea for improving our operation? You'll be surprised, even the folks that said their dad did it this way and somebody did it this way, it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. You kind of break out of that stagnancy by asking that one question. There was a question, and you can add this to your questions dashboard, that an individual asked, do any of the testimonies have mandated leadership training as part of being a chair and or a state leader? So if you've got one of those, just type that into the questions area, and we'll take that up and let folks know. And again, if we've got a handout that we can use, we'll try to put that handout up on our site. And let me check in with Mike and Aaron. Aaron, have I promised too much here in regards to what we could put up on our site?
Not at all, Ray.
Okay. Just better check in with the folks that really would know whether or not we could put these things up on our website and whatnot. But that's a pretty good website to go to. There's topical listings about things that are talked about at the NASCA annual meetings among field staff and that sort of thing. You might find that a treasure trove of some wonderful ideas, not only on this topic of recruitment and retention of board members, but more. Well, it's my pleasure, my honor to introduce the next speaker. We've got Stu from Washington State with a testimony or two about recruitment and retention. Stu?
I'm unmuted. Yay. Okay, good. So can you hear me okay, Ray?
Yep, coming through loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So Stu Treefry of the state of Washington Conservation Commission, a colleague of Ray's. So over the past couple of years, I've been performing with many conservation districts across our state, kind of a long-form planning process. And one of the things that we do in that planning process is we start out with at least one community meeting. Several districts have done three community meetings, and those community meetings have been really good about showing how the district works, who's part of the district, kind of introducing the district to some really key people that really should have known more about it. So those community meetings really kick-started a planning process for each board. And I know of 3 instances where a person who attended a community meeting is now a board member of one of those districts, and this just happened in the last couple of years. So that shows me that that's probably a good strategy for recruitment and getting interest, and it also kind of lets those people in under the hood of the district a little bit, since you're using those community meetings to help with the planning process. So that's one thing. Ray, earlier on in the presentation, you received a question about board members or boards that have a lot of disagreement on them, or philosophies that aren't likely to agree with each other. In one district in particular, I used this planning process as a way to help with a really philosophically diverse board. And frankly, I told them this almost in these words at the beginning of the process. I said, folks, you are a really philosophically diverse board, and the one thing that's going to keep you from killing each other is agreeing on a long-range plan. And so we went through the process of the community meetings. Over about a year, we developed this plan of theirs, and it's really helped keeping everybody on task and on track, and the philosophies don't surface so much. And I guess the learning point here is, with a philosophically diverse board, as long as they're focusing on the district plan and program to take care of their philosophical issues, but working together on those plans and implementing them, that goes a long ways to help with that issue. So that's a couple things that I'd like to bring up here. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate that very much. That's some good tips on how to keep a board energized, how to keep them focused, even when they don't necessarily agree on all the aspects. They can agree on what they want to accomplish and stay with that North Star. Appreciate that very much. The website address, Mike and Aaron, let's refresh our participants' memory here, and then we'll go back to presentation.
Sure, Ray. It's www.nascanet.org, NASCANET.org.
Thanks so much. So here's a couple of handouts that we, again, will be a part of the PowerPoint slides, but board members toolkit. What does a board member need in order to be really successful? And we have this from association management. It's back in 2002, but it's timely and it's important. For every board member to keep them active and engaged, always show up, find out what your leadership legacy is, get an early start on board material. Some of you mentioned that. Look forward, not back, and Stu just mentioned that too. What is it that we want to accomplish? Continue to review their mission, vision, and plan and their overall direction. Strategic thinking is a special responsibility of a board member. Talk to new members, bring in a member. It sets a needed example. And even association management in their leadership recognize the importance of recruitment of new members when they put this list together. Have your calendar with you at all times. Understand the plan for how we're going to deal with crisis. Figure out a filing system. Board work doesn't take a holiday. Disagree at the board meeting, but present a united front when you're out into the public's eye. Ask for staff research early. And those of us that are staff will really appreciate that one, won't we? That way the staff would have time to prepare the right stuff for the board discussion. The rapid turnover of employees costs time and money. One of the things that I do want to speak to is that some district boards and boards have actually taken upon themselves to impose their own term limits, not term limits imposed by the state, but those that are imposed on their own board. A policy of the Ledgerwood district, for example, may be to, 3 terms and you need to sit out a term or something, allowing the opportunity for new people, new diversity within the board ranks. Now, I know that would be heresy, and some of our district boards out there, I'd probably be, really accused of meddling in that regard. But there are boards that are active enough and thought-provoking enough to do that. All right, your board members toolkit that we'll send along here is deal with the name game now. That means the acronyms, the names of programs, that sort of thing, and get that fairly early in the hands of a new recruit that's just coming on as an associate or a new board member. Tune in to the leading indicators. Have a few leading indicators in your organization, your board, that you're watching, whether it be the finances, the program accomplishments, the environmental impacts that we're having. Grow room for new members. Agree on what constitutes the success for our organization. And that's a little bit different than everybody agreeing on everything, but you can agree on what constitutes success. in Stu's example, he mentioned long-range planning, you know, a North Star of what we want to get done. Achievement flows from the team at the top. So the chairs and the leaders actually do set a very important rubric for us to follow. Resist the temptation to micromanage, especially when you figured this out. The manager's going to do this, the board's going to do that. Here's where the responsibilities and roles really lie. The bottom line is that money does matter, and that be mindful of others, people's time as well as your own. Ask for great volunteers. And again, we've talked about volunteers, we've talked about associates. Effect a wonderful transition between a board member going out and a board member coming in. So again, if you've got another question or something, just go ahead and enter it right now, but we're getting pretty close to the end of our webinar time frame here. We just want to open this up for opportunity, or if there's another testimonial out there, we'd sure take that. So go ahead and put that up. Just because I think it might be important, I'm going to go to a slide or two here that I'm going to put in the slide set about effective organizations, because once recruited and once retained, what will make a really effective organization really stay effective? One will be that they'll have their goals well in place and understood by each of the members. Second would be they're watching what's going on around their organization that may affect their organization in such a way that they can accomplish their goals quicker or not accomplish their goals. And really good boards take this upon themselves, that have at least a little bit of time at every board meeting to talk about what's going on that's affecting your particular conservation district and its programs, the state association and its programs, the state board and its programs. The individual that gave us this from Washington State University said that procedures are important too, that in a really good, well-functioning board that retains good people, people know what they're doing. And not three-ring binders full of procedures, but certainly everybody knows how to file a travel voucher or bring up a discussion. Procedures can also mean those effective meeting things, which may be a topic for a future webinar discussion, is how do you have really effective meetings? And that's part of the procedure piece, you know, how we do business, and like the one example of calling upon associates, you know, to view their or voice their viewpoint before a vote is actually even struck by the voting members. And then finally, to recognize that tensions on a board and tensions between board members are regular. These are commonplace. They're not something to run away from. What we want to do, though, is look at the tension. What caused the tension, and that cause of tension, if we solve it, may make a better organization. So what, you know, after you deal with a conflict, then what did we just learn from that experience to make our organization better? And finally, some work done by Dale Darling of DuPont years ago. God rest him. Dale offered us this formula, and I bet you're struggling trying to figure out what it is that formula stands for. But Dale Darling, and one of the most marvelous last names I can think of, and he used to say in public circuits, he would say, "You can call me Darling." Dale said that you needed to pay attention to relationships before issues and tasks. And I think this is important in boardsmanship and important in recruitment and retention. That relationship you establish with that first question of what you want to accomplish, and from that point forward, are we able to help that individual, you know, accomplish those things that need to be, that they want to accomplish as an individual, and then finally your board becomes better because of it. And that Dale used to say there's a relationship bank account, and you actually put in deposits in that bank account by helping an individual accomplish what they want to accomplish through the work of your board. And then there's withdrawal. Some days just don't go like you want them to, and you take out a withdrawal, and you always want to keep a good bank balance in your relationship bank account. You don't want to be overdrawn. Those of you that have spouses, you may have already witnessed this in one fashion or another. And so that would be just some of those things that we could offer to you. Just a couple of extra slides there that I thought you might have interest in, and talk a little bit more about what we want. So I'm going to search for questions here on the dashboard, see if you sent us in anything. The website address. Again, Mike, give that one more time so the folks have it. For the one individual that did mention the testimonials and mandated leadership training, We'll do a little bit more digging into that to see if we find a state that actually has mandated training. Some of the states have good supervisor training activities, but we'll see if some of those are mandated. I think was the main key there, not voluntary. Okay. So Mike, let's talk about additional webinars coming up. I've got the website up there on the screen for the folks. Mike, take it away. Announcements and closing remarks.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate that very much. I want to thank all the speakers and for sharing your personal experiences. For those of you listening, of course, you've figured out by now that we took advantage of the expertise of one of our closest partners, Ray Ledgerwood, and we do that from time to time. And Ray, thanks so much. I know that I'll use a lot of the information that you shared with us today. I want to tell folks that before you sign off, we're going to have something else to bring to you. Aaron will have the resources from this webinar posted. I'm going to say give him a week and a half. You may have it done faster than that, but the reason it may be delayed just a hair is because we're going to send him down to Texas next week. The folks in Texas have invited us to come down and video their state training for their folks, which they're very proud of, and they have invited us to post that video on our website. So when he gets back from that, not only will he post this, but he'll work to edit that video, and then sometime not too long thereafter his return from Texas, he'll get that training video as another resource available to you on the NASCA website that you see on your screens now. Ray, as always, I want to thank the state of Washington for helping to host us with their technology. Been another great webinar, and we will be bringing you a couple more later this year. Watch for the announcements. Again, thanks to all the speakers, and Ray, a special thanks to you. Have a great day, folks.
My pleasure. And with that, then, folks, be sure to send along those ideas to Mike regarding future webinars and materials that you could use in your pursuit of board member recruitment and retention, and also any topic in the area of district operations and so forth. So we really appreciate the opportunity to do this with you today. Mike, your email address maybe for the folks might be good for your comments.
Yeah, Ray, I'm not sure if you have that available to put up, but it's mike-brown@nascanet.org.
Perfect. Well, with that, folks, thanks. We're going to end and give you 14 minutes of your time. We had scheduled for 2 hours. Appreciate your attendance. Appreciate your participation. Have a great day, and remember, we work in a blessed piece of work, and that's the conservation of natural resources for our generation and future generations. And there could be no higher calling than that work in regards to what we do. So good on y'all. We'll be talking with you at the next webinar. Thanks so much. Bye now.